Episode 215, episode 215. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Good night.
Whatever it is for wherever you are. A lot of our listeners are the next morning, so happy day to you, I hope. Nick's here. Ben's here.
I am.
Josh is here. And once again, Ben, I hear myself through your headphones. Just an FYI. Just turn it down just a hair. I don't know how loud it is or if your microphone is just that sensitive, Ben. Can you hear me now?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. It might be, I don't know. I really don't know what's the reasoning. But yes,
up,
I can
dude?
still hear you guys.
Good.
What up?
Our internet didn't, well, we're only 2 minutes in. But last week, I don't know if you heard, at the beginning, I ended up recording like an intro that was like, hey guys, this is post-show. We had some issues, and I kind of set them up to know what was going on, a little funky in the beginning. I'm still convinced that was like an internet outage because different states, different places, all three of us within like 30 seconds of each other or less. It was bad. So, Josh, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Just, I hear our show in the background somewhere. Someone's listening to our show.
That one might be you.
All right. we're off to a sweet start. It very well.
Yeah, I don't have us up on YouTube right
anyway,
now, and I'm all
so this is funny because the live chatters right out of the gate before we went live were taking bets on how the show was going to start, and here we are. But Nick, you're actually here with us. That was one of their bets.
I know, right?
You actually be here on time.
I'm not running or I'm not hosting a Disc Golf Pro Tour event this weekend, so I am here in person and actually on time, which is always a nice thing. It's very rare for me nowadays, but I'm hoping as the holiday season rolls through, it's crazy because you guys are hitting the off season. Like snow's hitting the ground, cold weather's hitting the ground. Man, here down in Florida, we are off to the races. We've got Q Series, that just happened over at Olympus. We've got the Florida Championships in December. We've got 2 big events in January. We've got that Elite Series event in February, and then 4 weeks of throwdown in March. Like we are go this off season down here in Florida, and we're stoked about it. But yeah, sometimes it's very tiresome.
Yeah, I can see that. We're going to talk a little bit about the actual Q Series qualifiers, like the people, how they qualified, and what we think. But just from an on-the-ground experience standpoint, Nick, how was it this past weekend having the Pro Tour in town? Did everything go smoothly?
Yes, everything went super smooth. I think one of the best things that happened throughout this whole process was Olympus was able to upgrade to X-Step Pro Disc Concept Turf Tee pads. That is one of the tour standards for the 2025
season. Say that 3 times
season.
fast.
X-Step Disc Concept, X-Step Pro, yeah, whatever. And no, we were super stoked about it. These tee pads are used.
Uh-oh.
He froze.
Yep.
Were there any bets on
back.
that? Were there any bets on Nick?
Back.
Were there any bets on Nick freezing?
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
What's funny is like I see myself frozen, and I'm like, wait, am I frozen in real life? I was kind of like tripping myself out for a second. I'm like, hold on, I'm still here.
So you got the new tee pads.
Anyways, you can leave 4 up just in case. But yeah, we got the new tee pads in the ground. They are super awesome. It's such a great turf. And the Williams brothers from Cactus Rock were able to come out this past week and help install them, help do a ton of coursework with me. Yes, absolutely. Shout out to the Williams brothers. They're some of my most favorite people to hang out with, and then also just have a really, really good, solid week of working with them. So, but when it comes to the Pro Tour side of things, I think they loved it. All their staff had a great time out here. The course was in incredible condition. The weather has been so good lately. We only had 1 rainy day of practice. Other than that, the course is in phenomenal condition, and yeah, it was super great. We're really looking forward. Hopefully, in the 2025 end of the season, the Q Series will be back there at Olympus, and then we've also already talked about layout changes, making some of the MPO layout harder. We did use the FPO layout for the MPO division this week. One of the biggest things that we struggle with right now is daylight. So we wanted to make sure that we could get everyone on the course and through the course in a timely manner. But next year, we're probably going to throw in 6 to 9 blue pin positions that we use for the MPO layout. And but yeah, it was super fun. It was great seeing a lot of the Disc Golf Pro Tour players. I mean, shout out to everyone that earned a tour card. That would be, Micah Groth and Leah Sinigeni in their respective divisions. And then Harry Chase got his tour card. Alexis Kerman got her tour card. And then a bunch of people qualified for the silver tour cards as well. So it was actually more rewards were out there than originally I had thought. So it was really cool seeing all these players come out. And then obviously our boy Harry Chase. He's one of the moderators on the show. He's also super native to New England. Super great, 1024 rated. Just incredible. I remember he beat me at a B tier back in 2022, and I was like, damn, this kid is really good. And going out, he won main states this year at Q Series event, and he almost took down the Q Series finale. Him and Micah had an awesome battle. And Leah Sinigeni, oh my gosh, from the chase card, throwing in 100-footers with the flick, making jump putts all over the place. It was really fun to watch. It's definitely, and I'm sure Gage Benson and anyone else who is a kind of a course manager out on their property, it's a really cool feeling watching very, very good players play and appreciate the course that you spend a lot of time on. So I'm super humbled for it. It was right back to the course though today. We have a lot of cool changes coming up for the Elite Series event. We've got a new hole coming into play. We're going to change up 16, make a couple other changes around the course, and all that starts now. Really looking forward to the 2025 Elite Series event. That they haven't dropped the name yet, but once it gets dropped, we're really excited to say that.
Checkers.com.
Yeah, checkers.com. Hosted by chess.com. That will be there again. So,
yeah, we're only 95 days away from the kickoff of the season.
That's wild. I hate that you said that. We're in the double digits already.
95 straight days, so the countdown begins. So even all the coursework you're doing for Q Series, et cetera, that's going to all build up, right, as we head into the beginning of the Pro Tour season. So we, depending on how the show flows tonight, we may come back and talk a little bit more about how the players qualified and who qualified. You mentioned some of the names there, so congrats to them.
You probably have a much better idea than I do.
Yeah, well, you hit most of them, but we'll talk about a few others. Also, looking forward to tonight, we're going to be talking with First Available Research, Jesse and Josiah. Remember, we had Jesse on earlier this year talking about the fandom survey. Well, now we have results, at least the first trickling of the results. Some really fun, cool stuff. So we'll have them on in a little bit. Looking forward to discussing that, breaking it down, seeing the amount of people who have responded, talking about favorite or least favorite players, and so on. So looking forward to that. But before a different kind of survey was taken earlier this year for Pro Tour End of Season Awards. I think a couple weeks ago, we talked about the closing of the voting. I don't think we knew when they were going to announce them, but it seems like the Pro Tour is starting to trickle those out. So there were 2 announcements today. So congrats to Rookie of the Year. For MPO, we have Jesse Nieminen, and FPO, Emily Weatherman. So those are your Rookies of the Year. I think we've seen the Pro Tour have some kind of growing pains in defining some of these awards, right? Like Juliana Korver winning in the past, et cetera. But to me, having these winners feels like the sweet spot. I think they're narrowing in on that. They feel like true rookies who joined the season. In fact, you literally have Emily Weatherman, who joined the season not expecting to tour the full season. And then I think saw early success, made some good friends on the tour, and really dove all the way in. Has a win on the Pro Tour, and just some top performance. And so certainly, deserving. And Jesse Nieminen, I think the only other MPO Rookie of the Year candidate who also had a win over in Europe. And just as a reminder, media vote is 1/3. Their actual standings on the Pro Tour is 1/3. And then this is cool. The tour card holders themselves also vote for Rookie of the Year. So I think it's fairly balanced perspective. Obviously, it is subjective to some extent because you're involving voting. But I don't know, any reactions to Jesse or Emily? I mean, I think they're deserving. That's my opinion. But any thoughts on that? Rookie of the Year.
I think they are both very, very deserving of it. I know Jesse had an incredible season overseas. Emily, obviously, an incredible season in the States. I don't remember if she went overseas or not, but definitely a great season for both of them. I know Emily had a chance to win once or twice throughout the road, once or twice throughout the tour, and she was able to pick up one of those wins. I will say I am curious though, and if we have time before our guests come on, but like, who are the finalists who did not get picked? Like, if you could list one or two.
Yeah, okay. This is going to be off the top of my head. You ready? This is pop quiz. For MPO, you had Braden Sides and Calvin Lonnquist, who I think are ranked like 52nd and 76th, maybe. Okay. In the Pro Tour standings.
Yeah,
and
I'll give my nod to Jesse.
Yep. So that's why I feel like Jesse probably deserves the win. He was also ranked the highest and has a win. Yep. And then in FPO, we have Eliezra Midling. And who wants to remember the other candidates? I'll have to go check.
Sorry, I'm doing
Wasn't-
a little behind the scenes
No,
stuff.
that's right.
I'm
No
not
idea.
focused as well.
You
as I
don't
should
have to be the one to know. Eliezra, Emily, and now I feel dumb for pulling a blank.
I feel like
rookie.
Pro Tour posted about
Yeah,
it.
for Rookie of the Year. Who was the other candidate? Wow.
I don't know.
mean, I can find it,
Chantel
but I'll neither.
Budinsky.
Yeah.
No, I can find it right
No,
now.
I think it was. Who's the other Estonian? Kade? Not KT Tati.
Heidi. Osalu.
Yes,
From the green room.
yes, that's right. Kaidi Al-Salu.
That's what
That's
it was.
right.
Okay.
So that was the third.
We'll
Alright,
give
so-
credit where credit's due in a minute here, but that's from one of
Yes.
our
Yeah.
guests in the green
Yeah,
room.
yeah. That's
Thank
what I
you.
thought.
So-
I was just looking it up quick, and I was like, I feel like that's who it is. And
So
looking
for
at it,
pop
and it
quiz, I got 2 of the MPO and 1 of the FPO.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Nick, I don't
Both
know if you were
very
just curious
deserving
about the
winners.
other names, but
Yeah.
Yep. So
Yeah,
congrats
he
to
was
them
great.
all, right, for qualifying. I personally feel like the right people got the awards. Honestly, as a rookie, winning an event is a pretty
Sick.
darn big deal. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, we talk about how hard it is to win, and you're competing against these big players. Remember Emily Weatherman? Remember all the drama after, was it DDO?
DDO.
Yeah, like I think for a brand new player, that's a lot of adversity. Like, I'm talking about on the course and off the course. Like, she's joining media and people are asking how you would do. Like, that's just a lot to kind of take
Yeah.
in when you're like, I was just going to join the tour. But congrats to her. So that's awesome. All right. Well, Matt, I don't know if we're still gearing things up or we should pick up another topic here.
We got a couple minutes, whatever you want to go.
All right, awesome. So, I'm just looking here. Q series.
Yeah. Let me just jump because I think if we're going there, that was something I was interested in talking about. So Q series finale, Nick gave the recap on it. Did this accomplish what the Pro Tour was hoping it would accomplish? That's kind of my question. It's not a judgment. It's more like, if I'm to answer immediately, yes. Like, this is what we needed, an entry point into the tour and make it somewhat of a storyline and exciting. The finale was all you really needed for that. And I think it was cool to say they're getting a tour card. Maybe we will or won't see them, but that's what they're playing for. And then what was interesting is to see other players that were on tour playing for a tour card. And you're like, wow, these are the players that may not make it in fully. And like, that's interesting as well. So what'd you guys think?
I think I'm going to kind of cut in on this really quick because we've known Leah Sinigeni for a while now. We've talked about her on the show before. She's been a touring, kind of a veteran for the last year or two. She goes out to all the events, and she wasn't able to get a tour card this year. Just I know she was dealing with some injury stuff. So this was a great opportunity for her to go out and fulfill that she is going to have a tour card going into the 2025 season. Because as we see, disc golf's getting harder and harder on the Pro Tour. Better players are coming up every single year, and they're fulfilling those spots. And for Micah Groth, same thing. Micah Groth, I think, incredible team discraft player, sponsored by Ledgestone as well, wants to get out there and prove himself. And this was an opportunity for him to get that tour card. And not too long ago is when we had Harry Chase on the show talking about how he was bummed out he doesn't get to play some of these events because they're so hard to get into now. Harry Chase just solidified that he can sign up for, if he, he can sign up for all of these events now and hopefully qualify for GMC, hopefully qualify for MVP Open, which are his, you would say, home tournaments. So I think this 100% did what it needed to do. I think going into the 2025 season, I feel like we had a lot more noticeable talk about Silver Series events compared to the Q Series events that we had this year. Kind of in years past, we talked a lot about the Silver Series. A lot of heavy hitters were at those Silver Series events. I think going into the 2025 season, this is something that the Pro Tour can look at. It was the first year that they did it, and they can look to improve on it as well. So, yeah, I think finale-wise, especially, I think it accomplished exactly what they were hoping it would.
Yeah. So I know we're going to wrap here in a minute, but my reaction, Matt, to your question is did it accomplish? I don't know, because I've heard mixed things. So if their goal was to accomplish a series where simply players who are not really big on big names get to try to play to qualify for 2025, to me, it looks like they accomplished that. if they're trying to grow any like storylines coming out of it, which by the way, I don't know if they really should. I'm fine with it kind of being like a behind the scenes type tour. I feel like I didn't hear much about the storylines. I know they covered the event this past weekend. So it's just like, maybe I'm kind of mixed on what their goal is. Yep. But if it's to literally give a chance for players to qualify, then they did it because players qualified. What will be interesting is to see of these players who qualified, how many events they choose to enter. Because then that's really where you would see it come in. Maybe let me just say that the names who qualified for a full 2025 tour, I'm not talking about silver card, but those players who earned at this particular event in MPO, you had Micah Groth, Harry Chase, and Jason Lawson. What's interesting about Jason Lawson is he was 7th in tour point standings, so he does not make a tour card if he doesn't finish in the top 3. So congrats to him for playing his way in. Micah and Harry would have qualified either way, by the way, because they were already high enough in point standings. Yep. So behind them, you get Noah Meinsma, who made it, Austin Bates, and Nicholas Gill. So congrats to those MPO players. And by the way, this is all my math. I missed it if the Pro Tour published anything. So
you're right. I looked at these names yesterday with one of the Pro Tour staff members, Max, and all those for MPO at least I know are correct.
Yep. And then in FPO at the finale, we have Lisa Sinagini and then Alexis Kerman, as you mentioned earlier, Nick. Now, Alexis was 4th in the tour point standing. So again, she earned her way by coming in 2nd at this event, which is awesome. And then, qualifying as points. Behind that, you have Hannah Stefanovic and Emily Yale. So congrats to these players. I hope we see them on the tour. We know it's hard to make it on the tour. I don't know how, if we expect to see their names, but a couple familiar ones on there anyway. So, congrats on Q Series. I imagine it can be more of a conversation as we head into next year. I know there's new events. This year, by the way, there were 11 events. So anybody who's curious, go out and look what's 2025. I think sometimes they're even adding some mid-year. Last year it spanned from May through November. So get on it if you want to qualify.
All right, cool. We got guests in the green room that I can see. I know you guys can sometimes tell, and we had a voice from the green room give us an answer a minute ago, which is very helpful. Maybe we should have more green room guests just like sit there to correct us.
Yeah,
and
in
make
the
us
background.
look good.
Yeah.
But without further ado, let's go ahead and pull in like that. I just thought of this mid-show, Josh and Nick and Ben. We could do it this way. It's a little different. Well, they can't even hear you right now when you talk, Ben. I can only hear them. So if you're on screen, we can hear you. Now you get to be the green room guest that tells us the answers. All right. What's up, Jesse and Josiah are you both working First Available Research? Is that good, Jesse? Oh,
situation. Can you hear me?
yeah, I can now. I had you muted because they're waiting in the chat for me to make a mistake because they're betting on things, and there it was. So go ahead, Jesse.
I don't know if working would be quite the word I would use for this. This is a project that we're growing over time. But yeah, Josiah and I are kind of the core, and we've got other people on our team at First Available Research, which is a new company we just started this year to kind of manage the fandom survey and write the articles and also try to commercialize it to some degree so that we can continue to grow this project and make it sustainable.
Yeah, awesome. And Josiah, I think this is your first time on our show. If I wasn't here and you came on once, I apologize, but welcome to the show as well. What's your role there with First Available Research?
Yeah, thank you so much for having us on. And this is my first time on the show, so You haven't missed anything. Jesse and I are a great team on this, but I handle much of the data analysis and processing of the surveys that we get. And that is getting more and more every year. And Jesse's probably going to jump into this, but this year we had almost 10,000 people fill out our disc golf survey, which is incredible. And I know that Jesse had come on to the show while the survey was live to promote and try to get some of your listeners to take the survey. And from the data that we got from the survey, over 750 people came from a podcast this year.
Awesome.
Which we think largely could be Stagger Stance as well as other podcasts that had promoted our survey. So thank you and your listeners for taking the survey.
Sure. And when you started saying data analysis. We lost a lot of our live. They just tuned out. It's not YouTube special. No, I'm kidding. But I do want to point this out for those who are kind of like, oh, this sounds like it may be boring. And yet we still have listeners who are thinking this sounds really interesting. We have a whole wide range. I will say, shout out to one of our fans from Maine, the state of Maine. I'm not going to throw his name out in case, he wanted to keep it private, but that had to be one of his favorite episodes when we were talking through the fandom survey last year, just the information that came from it. They found it extremely valuable and interesting. So for any of our listeners who are kind of like, what's going to go on, wait till you hear some of these survey results and what we can interpret it to mean. Data is data, right? But we can kind of make it say what we want sometimes if we use it that way. So it's great to have both of you. We will pass this around for questions, I'm sure, but you have a lot of information you're going to bring to us, and maybe we can comment on it when you ask us to. But in the meantime, if you guys are cool with it, I'm just going to put you guys up to go ahead and talk through, and you guys run the segment. And if you want our involvement, you let us know. How about that?
Just feel free to interrupt us at any point.
Okay.
We're just going to give some broad overview of the key findings. So we have 2 articles that are out so far. There's probably going to be, 9 articles that will come out over the course of the off season. Last year we had 7, but we have a lot more data this year than we had last year. The first article that we published, and both the articles are on Ultiworld Disc Golf, Ultiworld Disc Golf, so you can find them there, or you can also go to discgolfsurvey.com and you click on articles, and then you'll find all of our articles that we've ever written. The first article was the survey itself and who took it. So this is just, it's background information. So it's a way to figure out what our sample sizes were, the age demographics of our respondents, gender, all sorts of different the demographics of our respondents. So just in case you're wondering who took it, that's the article that covers that. And as Josiah said, nearly 10,000 people took our survey. Last year we had 3,000 respondents, so a lot more people took the survey than the past. I think the biggest thing is this year the Disc Golf Pro Tour and the PDGA helped promote our survey. So if you're watching DGN, if you're watching Jomez,
Right.
for about a month and a half long period, you would have seen ads, even live reads from the broadcasters telling people to take our survey.
Is it
that was huge?
First question to interrupt with, and maybe you don't want to disclose this. Did you have to pay for that, or was that a partnership that they reached out and wanted?
It's a partnership. We didn't pay them anything, but we reached out to them and said, hey, we can help you answer a lot of questions that you might have. And so this was something that, a big part of the reason we do the fandom survey is not just because we're curious about things, but we also want to advance the sport.
No, that's great.
There's no better way to advance the sport than working with the people that run the sport. So they gave us some questions that they were interested in getting answers for, and we were able to incorporate some of that into our survey for this year.
I think it was fantastic, and you got a lot of responses, and I'm really interested. So keep it going, guys.
Well, and what's really important about getting Disc Golf Pro Tour and PDGA is we're able to reach a much broader audience. For the past 2 years, the people who found out about our survey are the people who listen to podcasts like Staggered Stance, who read Ultiworld Disc Golf, who are involved on Reddit. So it was a much more involved fan. Whereas this year we reached a much broader audience, and that has changed some of our results probably as a result of that larger audience.
Yeah.
So Josiah, do you think that we've covered enough here on the survey itself?
Yeah. So our second article that came out at the same time last week was about which pros we root for and against, and we looked at that in a variety of different ways with the questions that we asked in the survey this year. But the main one that was initially the foundation of the survey was fandom score. Who do you root for and who do you root against when you're watching pro disc golf? So I think it would come as no surprise that the number one MPO player and who people root for is Simon Lizotte. And the number one FPO is Kristen Tatar. And these are the same as last year, but there has been a lot of changes over the other players besides those two in terms of fandom score over even this 1 year between when we took the survey last year. So other people who both years have scored really highly, Calvin Heimberg, Owen Scoggins, Matt Oram, Nate Sexton, all of these are people who you would expect to see up at the top that a lot of fans are rooting for. But we had some newcomers, first time in the survey, newer players on tour that were top 10 or top 15 finishing in fandom rank out of these 100 people that we asked about. And that included Silva Saarinen, Anniken Sten, Emily Weatherman. These are some people who played their first event this year and are now in the top 15 in terms of who fans are rooting for out on the disc golf course.
Wow. So who fans root for? I think, what does that, I mean, is it just give us the obvious, or is there anything that stands out that's like, that wasn't obvious?
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of things that pop out that aren't immediately obvious. So one of the things we looked at was who are some players that there's a large group of fans that root for, but also a large group of fans who root against.
Okay.
Do you have anyone that comes to mind when you look at those type of players?
Oh, yeah, actually, I mean, it's a little bit interesting in this, I want to say day and age. I mean, I've disc golf for 17 years, but I wouldn't be surprised if Paul McBeth was one of those.
Yeah. So both Gannon and Paul McBeth make up in the top 5 of that.
We got Ben in the green room yelling. That's what I said. So, okay, cool. So those two stand out. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So Paul McBeth, Ricky Wysocki, and Gannon Burr are the 3 largest on the MPO side that have large chunks of fans who root strongly for them. Like, this may be their favorite player, but also groups of fans that root strongly against them. They do not want to see this player win. Wow. And on the FPO side, the 2 that jump out most in that characteristic are Paige Pierce and Kat Mersch, where you have large fan groups rooting for, but also fan groups against.
Wow. I'm a little bit taken back by Kat Mersch. And this is maybe for our perspective, and maybe you don't want to share your opinions, or maybe you do, but for the show here, Josh, like, is it Kat Mersch? She is like, I don't want to say polarizing in some sense, but in some ways, she is such a personality that it's almost like you're in or you're out on her personality a little bit, right? Is that what you think that may be part of?
Well, that's what, like, if you're asking me or not, but that's what you were just saying, right, Josiah? Is that's
Kat Mersch is both liked, rooted for, and rooted against significantly. So I'm saying, like, what would it be that people were rooting against Kat Mersch on? Like, I feel like I can get Paige. She's been around a while. She's coming back, kind of like the Paul McBeth thing. But what is it about Kat?
Okay, I mean, if you're going to ask us to speculate.
That's why I said I'm not putting it on.
Okay, all right. Just making sure.
Purely asking,
there's no data, right? You didn't have any like open-ended, like, tell us why you voted for these people, did you?
Oh,
so in all previous years, we had only asked the question of just, do you root for or against this player?
Okay.
But this year, with different advancements we've done to the survey, we had a lot of follow-up questions that ask questions like, what is the main reason you root for somebody? Or how much do you value a certain characteristic when you're choosing who to root for? So, such as, like, you like their personality. You're in awe of what they're capable of doing. They're from the same location as you. Questions like that. And through analysis of those, we can figure out what is driving the fandom of certain players. And that, as a whole, is just a teaser for the next article that's coming out in the survey series next week, which is really diving into this question of what drives the fandom of specific players.
Yeah. So again, in the deep waters of speculation, but I follow enough disc golf. Somebody like Kat, I think has kind of toned back on some of the public, but she's obviously spent time and has a relationship with Nico, and Nico's one of the least liked MPO players. So of course, like, I can't necessarily say correlation, causation, I don't know, but just like, that's where it's interesting, all the multiple dynamics that could come into play. I mean, she kind of had a faux pas in social media here after the survey was closed. So I don't think that would probably even be like considered in that mix, but it's that kind of personality that's more likely to make, to be their authentic self. But their authentic self may or may not resonate, and that's where you get kind of the polarization, right? And then you have people who are probably a little bit more polished in their public persona. In their personal life, who knows how polarizing they are, but they've figured out how to kind of manage that, which I think in many ways is what this survey is actually telling us, right? It's fandom, it's the public perception. None of this is actually evaluating who they are as a person, right? It's like, I'm curious, and maybe you have more data to share, so I don't want to take us off track.
Well, I wanted to highlight one chart. One thing that we did in this article is there's a lot of interactable components so that you can compare the distributions of fandom scores given to any two players. So you can compare them. So one example we gave was Vino Makala and Gannon Burr, and they have the same average fandom score. Was it like 6.53 versus 6.54, if I remember correctly off the top of my head? Something like that. But they have the same average fandom score. But then if you look at their distributions, Gannon's is much more polarized than Vino's. And it shows that you can kind of get to the same fandom score even with very different makeup of how people feel about you. And that's something we encourage people to play with in the article itself. You in the charts themselves, you can choose any two players out of the 100 and compare them to each other.
Yeah, so let me come back, and then again, I want to make sure whatever you're all planning to share, because first of all, I deal a lot with data in my normal job and data visualization and sometimes interpretation. So I love what you've put out there. So Jesse, I'm going to jump on that same promo. Right now, literally on my same computer, I'm playing around with all the charts and comparing the players, and really kind of awesome interactive. So really great work there. It's more than just a report of data. You can actually like go out there and play around and see some really, really cool stuff. So just kind of emphasizing that. And I also want to ask, you ready? Like everything that says we had almost 10,000, how disappointed were you when you were like just short? Because they have to say almost 10,000 is like a rounding error, right? Like, come on.
I mean, I wouldn't say I was personally thrilled the number was that high. Yeah. Now we have a specific goal to shoot to eclipse next year. So.
Yeah, exactly. It was more just like kind of playing along with like, it must have been really close if you're saying almost.
Just to be clear, we didn't have 10,000 people or nearly 10,000 people finish the survey. We did have like a bunch of incomplete surveys. We had about 6,500 people actually complete the survey, something like that.
Yeah, we had almost 7,000 complete the entire survey, but which is really good survey completion percentage, especially for how long some of these surveys were. So some of these surveys, if you were answering the full length of all these sections, were over a half hour in length. So, it's incredible that our response rate was that high at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, we even right away in the chat earlier during this live show, we had somebody say survey was tough to complete, timed out after answering all those questions. Arg. So like, I'm sure you have a range of things that are happening for people, but I agree that's and obviously it's really about a trend. You had a significant uptick in kind of responses. So back to kind of the fandom score and favorite players, etc. Yep. We have talked about this before. And maybe this is left for us to speculate because it goes beyond the data. But do you think any of this information is useful for players, sponsors? Because I just made comments a moment ago. This is really evaluating the public perception of a player.
Yep.
Just curious what your thoughts are as you look through the data, especially as you look at all those secondary questions where you started saying why. What's your thoughts on that?
So I think as a standalone, just seeing a fandom score, just seeing Gannon Burr and then a number like 6.5, I don't think that's a useful piece of information for him. But any follow-up question about that or any cross or interaction between questions in the survey that we can analyze may be really interesting. So for instance, if we're looking at a certain player, we can see if their fandom score is high among younger survey respondents. Are they very popular in the 15 to 20 age demographic? That might be very appealing for a certain disc manufacturer who may be wanting to sponsor them in future years because their biggest fans are the people who are emerging in the disc golf market. You can also have many follow-up questions about why someone is rooting for a certain player and things that a player can lean into to try to make themselves more people's favorites. So I think there's lots of ways this can be useful to the players. Jesse, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that.
Yeah, we've had one of our clients as an agent. So we have had disc golf agents buy data packets from us so that they can be ready for free agency. There's so much information. This article is kind of just covering the basics, the basic intro to our research, but we have so much data that for any one subject, we can write pages and pages and pages of all these really interesting results that, we can't publish all this stuff because it's just too much stuff to publish.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, I remember last year when we had you on, and it was fun for us, but it was pointing out the value of people who listen to podcasts and their number one player maybe being ranked higher and more liked because maybe they did, and again, and maybe it's speculation, but because they did more media appearances, like people get to know them better and they get a higher value. And so being able to tie that stuff together, I would imagine to a player says something like, hey, if someone reaches out to you to come on the show, it might be worth your time. You get more liked, maybe, just as a for instance. So yeah, let's keep going.
Yeah, so cool. Jump back into the data. So we also have asked questions about rooting for and rooting against in previous fandom surveys. So we can compare fandom scores between years to see which players' fandom scores are increasing the most, which one people are gaining popularity over the year. So for over the past year, in MPO, the player who gained the most popularity, had the biggest increase in fandom score in the past year is Ricky Wysocki. And the player in FPO is Evelina Salonen, both of whom have had great successes over the past season, but also are personalities that seem to be really driving with the fans of disc golf right now. So we have an entire graph documenting any change in fandom score over the different years for different players. We also asked directly, who is your favorite player? So this is not some, are you rooting for or against someone, just who is your favorite player? And the same two, Simon Lizotte and Kristen Tatar, are the highest ranked in that, as well as the fandom scores.
Can you not tell us the top two? And I'm off camera right now. Ben can talk for me, but let me here. I'll pull myself up. Don't tell us the top two or top three. And I'm just curious. Yeah, I'm sure you have it there, and I haven't looked at this. Josh, what do you think? You're looking at it.
I've
Ben, have you been looking at
report.
Fandom survey?
Yeah, who's most liked, or who's the top fan vote? Not necessarily most liked, but who's their favorite player besides Simon, for instance? Who's number two
in MPO?
Calvin, right?
Oh, that's okay. Is that a good pick?
Yep, Calvin is number two in MPO as the 18, a little over 18% of people. He is their favorite MPO player.
Did Ben's camera go bright? Like he's like, hey, Calvin, click. No, it goes dark.
I just read it off the article.
Yeah, Ben's
that was a great guess.
Wow.
I literally was just
like, FPO, I was like,
Ben? I was just going to scroll down the page.
Owen Scoggins.
Yeah. We're learning about Ben's ability to navigate the web.
Good.
Hey, I like it again, Josiah, Jesse, like maybe we're bouncing you around and you had an agenda, but the change in percentage, right? I find that interesting because there's a little bit of, I don't know if it's true recency bias, but year over year, right? And you can click on it and see the multi-year trend. And like, for example, I mean, like this year for MPO, right? The top four are Ricky, Niklas, Anthony, and Gannon. Obviously, Anthony was he a write-in in an earlier year? Something like that. But anyway, it's like those players are I'd have to look at it and see if we're missing somebody, but they're literally the players who had the most wins on the season. And I have not done the same comparison to scroll down for like FPO, but like, well, Silva Saarinen, Owen Scoggins, Evelina Salonen, like, right, seeing some names there. I just think it's really interesting. And I feel this subjectively in the ecosystem. Players who win, like, it's a pretty darn big deal. Like all of a sudden people start wanting their favorite player are the ones that win.
Yeah. So the data in these graphs definitely agrees with that. And we said that all the biggest increases in MPO are all multi-event DGPT winners this season. But it's interesting that when we explicitly ask our survey respondents, why is this your favorite player? What is the main reason driving this? They being a winner or they winning events is not the top or the second most answer for that. So there
Of
are other
course it
factors
isn't.
at play here. But I do, so this could either be someone not being true to themselves of why they like a player, but it also could be them winning gets them a little more exposure, and then they see different attributes of that player that they wouldn't have if they hadn't won. So
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because you have like Simon Lizotte, who has had, first of all, if you're at the top before, it's obviously hard to stay there. So it's very likely, unless you stay there, you're going to be one of the biggest drops, which is Simon's story, even though he's still one of the most favorite player, right? So like, it's not a problem for him. Although I guess if it became a year-over-year trend, but we talk about like the year before, he was also a really big winner. And this year he was down to 1 win. So I just think it's interesting, and maybe more of a question of, psychology of, fans may have other reasons why they believe they choose a player, but that player may be in the collective, zeitgeist because they're winning.
That's what
right?
I was
And all of a
trying
sudden,
to-
it's like,
yeah.
all of a sudden, these are the players we're talking about. Now I got to choose which one I latch on to because they're the names, right? Because we're not talking about James Conrad much this year. Just because he's not winning, he's kind of faded from his performance. It's not that people would like him less, but he's like not one of the people you would choose unless you have some other really reason that's overbearing. So maybe I'm making some obvious statements, but what I love about the data is it gets us to reflect on these things, and it kind of raises these questions in dialogue. So I love it.
Yep, he's not being interviewed. He's not on the, James Conrad's not on Staggered Stance after a big win because he's not winning. And so you get out of the public eye. And I think that, eventually your fandom score is going to go down.
Yeah.
And your, being the most popular player will go down.
Yeah. And for stat wise, he's been on our show one time. One of the biggest interviews of our show after he threw in that shot to win Worlds or to go to playoff overtime.
Right.
But
By the way,
besides
I
that,
think we see,
he hasn't won much.
but it's interesting too. Like then you see like Kristen Tatar was also one of the biggest drops, probably because she was the top last year. And she still won a lot this year, but it didn't feel quite as dominating, right? However, she is still like leaps and bounds far the favorite player, right? So like, when you're moving from, I don't know if I see it here, but the data's got to be something like, well, I guess I can click on it. 48, almost 49% last year. That's pretty crazy. Literally half of the people are saying, you're my favorite player. And this year it's like 45%. So wow.
Yeah.
Like that's still pretty ridiculously incredible. And we're not surprised by that. But then I start thinking like, how does another FPO player break into that? Like, do they win? Do they get a media presence? Do they focus on personality? They need all the second layer of data that you all have. They're going to have to read all your articles coming in the next month.
So for
I
instance,
think start by winning.
Yeah, start by winning.
Start with winning.
Play at a very high level. And so this, in my opinion, would prime Cat Merch for this role. You have to be, I think you have to have a personality. The bigger personality you are, sometimes the better. If you did genuinely yourself, Cat Merch, and she did video vlogs like Simon Lizotte, and she just did them regular, and she was just who she was, I think she starts gaining huge followings. Now, she would have to win some more, but like she's already kind of tapped into that a little bit. If she could keep that up, I see that opportunity for her to go really high, but who knows? Let me bring in Ben.
Yeah, bring me in. One of the things that kind of struck me as surprising, I guess, is you're talking about if Cat Merch made videos and stuff like that. Ezra Aderhold, that's what he does. He gets tons of views on YouTube and stuff like that. So he doesn't win, but still, and he has 60 people as his number one pro. He's on the Who's Your Favorite MPO list out of, I don't know, it looks like 10, 15 players. But that's something that surprised me. I always assumed kind of like, if you're on YouTube and putting yourself out there, that your score is going to be really high. But that was definitely a surprising one for me. And he has, 60 people that say that he is their favorite player. So I would
He is a
expect
personality. He is a
7, 8.
personality, and that's what I think is being said here. He has that to him, where he just posted some like reel where he's like traveling the world, and it's like you going to get drawn into it, and you're like, who is this guy? Like reality show star. But I think to what Jesse was saying, kind of an off answer, but just like start by winning. Like I kind of feel like that's the conversation here. So I think you need to add that, and you'll have the perfect mix, which goes back to Simon Lizotte. That's what Simon did. He won, and he's so likable with his videos and the media and all that. So there you go.
I feel like he was likable before the video. Before
he went
like
through the roof
the winning
when
though.
he started winning. Same thing with Matty O. Like Matty O, those who knew him thought he was like super like people's favorite kind of person, right? But
Matt, can everybody hear you?
Yeah, they can hear me. They should be. Yeah, I'm the only one. I'm the producer, Mike. But but like so Matty O, when he won, I think there was a lot of people that came to realize who is Matty O. Like we've heard about him, but now like we're taking everyone's word for it, how awesome he is. And then when we see him win, like we've bought in. And I don't know where he is on that list right now.
Well, yeah, I'd be curious.
But like
we
he's
could
gotta
see
be, like,
Matty O's
but like from
rankings
previous years,
from the
if we had-
past years.
Yeah, if we had the data
before he won.
to like after.
Oh, I can tell you
don't-
last year, Matty O did go up by about 2% this year
yeah,
in
good.
terms of who's your favorite MPO player. But we also, in one of last year's articles, we did pre-survey and post-survey
Cool.
change in fandom score. And that was when he won MVP. And so Matty O had the biggest bump by far, pre-survey and post-survey, even higher than Isaac Robinson's Worlds win. Matty O really did benefit from that because he had everything else going for him in terms of personality. He's been on tour forever, but he just lost. And once he became a winner, that really kind of made people like him a little bit more. I think that was a significant booster for him.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just like thinking about all the variables at play, like somebody like Matty O, who's basically almost non-existent in social media and in media in general.
True.
But it's like there's no like one recipe to show up, with the exception of winning a lot. It would be really cool to have like a legit like villain start winning a lot and see like that tension at the top of the stats, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because Ganon, I think for some people, is becoming a villain because he's young and he's beating a lot of everybody's
Yeah.
favorite players. And so I think Ganon is, to me, the most interesting player when you're studying fandom right now in terms of how people feel about him and what are the demographics that drive how people feel about them. How do fans feel about other players in comparison to how they feel about Ganon? So we have so much interesting ways of kind of dissecting, Ganon at this part of his, rocketing up to the top of the sport. And I think that I don't want to speculate on things, but there's all sorts of theories that come into my head that are related to Ganon and to Ricky's huge rise this year. So I think that there's all sorts of interesting things that we could dive into.
Yeah. Yes, for sure. Yeah. I could pick your mind. What else are we missing? What else did you want to share with us?
Yeah, so I was going to say, first off, so if this data sounds interesting to you, these articles are published and freely available on discgolf.ultiworld.com as well as at the discgolfsurvey.com. And so those are the two articles that we have published so far. We've alluded to the third one that's coming out very soon, which is really diving into the why. What is driving fandom to specific players? And how is that different amongst different populations? It's the same things that are driving fandom in Americans, driving fandom in Europeans for American players. Questions like that will be in the next article that's coming out. But I want to also highlight that the fandom survey, and anyone who took it knows this, isn't just about player fandom. We ask questions around a wide variety of things, including disc golf as entertainment and disc golf as something we do, something we play. So we have articles coming out about those as well. So the disc golf, first, there's going to be articles about disc golf manufacturers and the discs that we buy and bag. So I know a potentially interesting question to some members here would be, what percentage of people bag at least one hooligan disc? We'll have some information on what people are buying and bagging. We're also going to have stuff about disc golf entertainment. How do people watch disc golf? How do people consume coverage? Outside of professional disc golf coverage, how do we consume disc golf media? So there's going to be questions about podcasts. There's going to be questions about staggered stance that will come out. And then we'll also have an article about how we play the sport. Where you fall in the leagues that you play in. You're maybe the furthest throw in the league you play in, but where do you fall amongst the entire disc golf population in length or in rating or something like that? We'll be able to dive into that a little more in one of our later articles this offseason. So if any of that sounds interesting, feel free to check us out on those sites and servers. But one thing I did want to highlight, though, is because we asked in the survey about podcasts, who listens to podcasts and what podcasts you listen to, I did some extra fun analyses just for Staggered Stance. So I'll lead off in saying, of people who were asked, do you listen to disc golf podcasts? Amongst our survey takers, 52% of them say they listen to podcasts about disc golf. 37% of those said they listen to Staggered Stance. And that's on this weekly to, we also have like a frequency of Staggered Stance was weekly. So of these Staggered Stance listeners who are our respondents, some cool things were from them. We had survey respondents from 19 different countries who listened to Staggered Stance.
Nice.
And we had 49 states have survey respondents.
Oh, baby. Who's the 50th state not listening? Is it Alaska or Hawaii, or is it like North Dakota?
Hawaii. You got it with Hawaii.
All right.
Yeah.
So we're going to give them a bang, bang. Come on, Hawaii.
Maybe do some Facebook ads in Hawaii.
Yeah, what is going on? If you're listening from Hawaii right now, would you just send me a message? Any of our social channels. I'm interested if you listen. You just didn't take the survey because I'm pretty sure we have listeners over there. Cool.
Yeah. So one really cool thing that we can do with the survey is we can cross-reference and look at interactions between different questions. So something we can do is we can look at the fandom of just Staggered Stance listeners. So just respondents who listen to Staggered Stance, who are their favorite players? What is the fandom score who are they rooting for? So I think it would be kind of interesting if we turn this into a little game where you can try to guess who the Staggered Stance listeners root for more than the average survey respondent.
Okay, I'm going to do this for the broadcast, like media purposes on screen. Let's see if I can do this. Jesse, you're off for just a minute here because he's asking the question and I can get the rest of the show up. I should be able to swap you out though, Jesse, if you have something to contribute here. All right, so ask that again.
All right, so we're looking at fandom score. So this is the question of who do you root for and who do you root against? So just of listeners of this podcast, who do you think Staggered Stance listeners root for more than an average survey respondent? The rest of survey respondents who don't listen to Staggered Stance.
We can all kind of contribute. I'm going to say Paul Macbeth.
Yeah. Gannon. Missy. I'm going to say
Missy
both
Gannon.
Gannons.
I think that's a great pick, actually.
Yeah, I would say Missy. The problem with Gannon is he's already so high. Right, and it's relative, but I guess I'm going to say that too. I mean, we literally have him on the show so much. I don't know if people love that or not, but Gannon Burr, Missy Gannon. I like that, Ben.
All right, So again, there were 100 people in the survey this year. Paul Macbeth and Missy Gannon ranked 23rd and 24th.
Oh,
so not up at the top in terms of boosts. Okay. So both of them were rated higher amongst Staggered Stance listeners, but down in 23, 24. So you want to give another guess?
Jeremy Colling.
I said Gannon. Gannon
well, he's not giving us the number one yet. He's trying to let me give another pick.
All right, I'll say Gannon, and for FPO, I'll say, I mean, it might still just be Kristen, just because Kristen's the most popular in general.
But again, this is an increase, so it would have to be more popular
Oh.
than she
Than the
already
rest of the
is.
world, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Like
Oh,
our
sorry.
show
I
fans. I
misunderstood.
mean, maybe fans or not. They're the ones who indicated it on the survey.
Increase.
Our show fans, relative to the rest of
KC
the
White.
population.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Casey
Great one.
White. That's my pick.
That's a great one.
All right, I'll start off with number 6. The 6th most increased is Gannon Burr.
Okay.
The 5th most increased is Casey White.
Okay,
All
at a
right.
top 5 at least.
Dang it.
4th most increase is Ezra Robinson.
Oh,
I
nice.
don't know if you've had him on the show, but
We've
Yes,
had
we
once,
have.
I think.
I don't
Uh,
think recently, but yes, we have.
This year.
the 3rd and 2nd most increased are
Joey
Alden
Buckets.
Harris and Gavin Babcock.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So all in this friend group
Yes.
of
Yep.
pro players who I know have appeared on the show in different ways.
Yes.
And again, very interesting. The number 1 here is Brody Smith.
I was okay.
Really?
I was literally gonna say that as a joke. Like, or I was gonna be like Brody Smith, ha ha ha, and then it's like, that's actually awesome.
That's funny.
Yeah. So,
Brody, you in
so-
the chat? He's in the chat sometimes. So there you go, Brody. That's pretty cool.
I think
Yeah,
that
so-
might be because podcasts in general, like if I'm listening to the podcast, I'm on Staggered Stance. I listen to Tour Life. I listen to Grip Locked. Like it's just like how it is. So if since I'm on the show, I can't listen to the show in my free time. So I'm sure other people are the same, where they have Staggered Stance on Tuesdays, but then once Staggered Stance is done, or vice versa, then all right, what else is there
They
listening?
go on
It's
to
like
the
Tour
next
Life, Grip Locked, Ulti World.
So
There's
because they listen to our show, Brody's their favorite. Oh, I see. You're saying because they listen to podcasts.
Yeah, because they're a podcast listener, they also get the lift.
Yeah.
Well,
Yuli's
and to
gotta-
be fair,
Yuli's
we
gotta be
talk
up there a
about
pretty decent amount.
we
right?
talk about his performances probably more than they do. I don't know. I mean, it'd be.
Yeah.
I know he talks about his performance. He's a touring player. He does that. But I mean,
Yeah.
from a perspective of like
recaps.
analyzing it, like we do more. That's kind of my take was there. Sorry.
Yeah, Nick, to your point, Yuli is up there. He's right around the top 10 mark in the increase among Staggered Stance fans. So
That makes
yeah,
sense.
so I had the exact same thought as all of you, that it's likely podcast listeners listen to podcasts. So people who listen to Staggered Stance are more likely to maybe watch Tour Life as well.
100%.
But so I looked into it, and only 2% of Staggered Stance listeners only listen to Staggered Stance. Do not listen to any other disc golf podcast. Only 2%
Which
amongst
makes
our
sense.
survey respondents. So that seems to agree with
Shout
all
out
of your
Dan.
theories here.
Just kidding.
Shout out Doc Zen. He's the one listener, always loyal.
No, Doc shows up everywhere though. He's not
I know.
2%. Doc,
Doc
Doc
is
consumes
everywhere.
every
Doc is
piece
everywhere,
of disc
man.
golf
Yeah.
media on the internet, I think. Yeah, that's interesting.
So we also ran that same analysis between Staggered Stance listeners and the average survey respondent for the question about who is your favorite disc golfer. So this is no longer fandom. It is who is your favorite disc golfer. Which players do you think saw the greatest increase?
Freddie.
Wait, okay, this is relative to the rest of the survey.
Yep, relative to the rest of the survey.
All right. Gannon Burr.
Isaac Robinson.
Just favorite disc golfer in general. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd say Gannon Burr. Gannon Burr, and I'd be curious to hear the FPO.
Yeah, Gannon
The one
Burr.
before the
I feel like it's gotta be
statistic.
like an Owen Scoggins, just making a
improvement.
huge jump up.
I'm going to say Missy Gannon again. I don't know if that's right, but
All right. So on the MPO side, number 3 was Paul Macbeth. Number 2 was Gannon Burr. And Gannon Burr had over 3% more survey respondents pick him among Staggered Stance as compared to all survey respondents. And number 1, I mean, you guys are in New
Simon.
England, so it's Simon Lazat.
Hey.
there you go. That makes sense.
And on the FPO, you are 100% right. The number 1 increase amongst your listeners is Owen Scoggins.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yo, we hyped Owen up this year. The last 2
That's-
years,
that's a good call,
realistically,
Nick.
has
She
been
hyped
just
herself
talking
up,
about
yeah.
Owen a ton.
But that was another one that I was like, I'm not trying to say I knew these but I was going to say it, but in my head, I'm like, no, she's already like so far up there. Like it was hard for me to say that we would have done that. So
Yeah.
Well, so here's the thing. We've had Owen on, and she's given some great interviews that
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure people
Fantastic.
have like that have swayed them just like that. I'm not saying that, but it matters. Well, with such a small pool of us, our listeners, I'm sure they listen to Owen Scoggins. Like, oh, she's so cool. I'm a new fan of her, just from our podcast. So I think that can make sense.
Fun interviews with her. That's why I've always liked Missy Gannon's interviews. Are always really fun. I mean, there's a ton of them.
Yeah, so I wasn't able to cross-reference with, how often someone appears on your show, because I don't have
yeah, you would have had to reach out for that.
Available.
Yeah.
But if you're interested in that, we can definitely look into that.
Interesting.
Well, we know Missy, the reason we keep saying Missy and Gannon is because they were the top 2 guests, MPO and FPO side. We had them on the most. So that's why we were kind of like expecting that.
It's got to be them,
Yeah, I do think one interesting thing, though, is, we're only talking about the increases in fandom amongst your listeners. What of your listeners do you think are below the levels of fandom? And we can just talk about for favorite player.
Below as in like percentage change? Are we going back to percentage change?
So change in favorite player. Who do your listeners
hate
like
the most,
less
basically?
Like
than
less
the average
this year,
survey
or
response?
the average. Ooh, who do we talk about in that way? That's kind of funny.
Or who doesn't come on your show, maybe.
Well, that's
that could
true.
also potentially be it.
Yeah,
That's
true.
true.
I don't think we got Paul on it all this year. So shoot, in my books, he dropped way down in my own books. I put the number 1 for liking Paul Macbeth.
Least liking.
Our survey has a couple more respondents than just Nick Carl, so it's not Paul.
That's good.
Yeah, I honestly couldn't tell you. I don't.
I would.
So
I gotta
Chris Dickerson.
Just guess.
Chris Dickerson. That's
just
that's my
random
guess.
shots.
Yeah, that is random. Did we even have him on the show this year? I don't think we did.
Not this year.
No, and I've been disappointed with
True.
his performance, and I've said such. So,
But his
I don't know. That's why I'm
performance
just
is like
guessing. I have
solid
no
still.
idea.
That's the weird part. He just didn't win.
All right,
Yeah.
so number 3 biggest drop is Ricky Wysocki. So
Really?
again, these players aren't like none of your listeners like Ricky Wysocki. That's not at all what I'm saying here. So Ricky Wysocki was the favorite of like roughly 9% of all survey respondents, and amongst your listeners, it was around 6%. So a drop, but not
Right.
not
So a lot of
drop.
people here still have Ricky as their favorite player, but not as much as the rest of the world.
Yes, exactly. That's a great way of putting it. The number 2 biggest drop is Calvin Heimberg.
It's because of Matt.
Yep.
Thanks,
Matt,
Matt.
for that one.
And then when I
Yeah.
see Calvin on the side of at an event, I'm like, dude, people think I hate you. He's like, oh yeah, pretty cool.
I mean, now there's the data to back it up that your hate of Calvin
That's
Heimberg
so
is spreading.
That's so funny.
And the biggest drop is Niklas Antila,
Huh.
which
What?
I think is probably contributing because of what percentage of your listeners are from the U.S. compared to Europe. And there's probably more U.S. listeners listening than the average survey respondent. So
Yeah, and we had reached out to him post like what event was it that he won? Oh, his first one. Or not, yeah, his first tour event. Where was that?
he was in the Texas swing.
Thank you. And he was really busy with like Disc Golf Pro Tour media. They were doing shoots and getting all their media for the rest of the season. But I talked to him at MVP Open, and I got his phone number for both countries, because when you travel back and forth to Europe, you get like a different, I don't know if it's a SIM card or different number. So we could never contact him post events that he performed well. And I was like, dude, like, are you evading us? He's like, no, like my phone number keeps changing. And I'm like, okay, so let me get he goes, I have a phone number now that you can access me in either country. It's one number. So all I have to say is, for people who are like, man, we don't get to hear from Niklas on Stagger Stance, like, hopefully that changes. That's what I'll say. Hopefully. we don't have as much of excuse now, except for like 7-hour difference.
We love Niklas.
Yeah, and one thing I will also add is that if anything in this conversation spurred a question in you or any of your listeners' head of, wow, I didn't know this data existed, I'm really interested about this, all of our articles have a link at the bottom where you can submit those questions, and we're hoping to do mailbag mailbag articles at the end where we can answer some of these questions that people just have, or thoughts or interactions that, we at our team, we and any of the people on our team didn't think of when we were writing the articles.
Right. Yeah. So we've gone through a lot of information. Well, not as much as you have, but what's coming out? What's coming out? I know it's next week. We were going to try to figure it out, but this week is when it worked out. What's coming next week that people can look forward to?
Jesse, you want to take that?
Well, this is really trying to figure out the why between why are we rooting for each of these players. It's I don't want to spoil anything. It's a great article. Josiah's writing is doing the primary writing on these articles, and I'm kind of just mostly just doing support with charts and graphs and giving them feedback. But Josiah's got some really interesting bits. One thing is when we look at European respondents, how do their opinions differ than American respondents? How about female respondents? Who are they rooting for compared to Americans, and what is driving them to root for players compared to women versus men, Europeans versus Americans? So I think that's there's all sorts of really interesting things there, but I don't want to step on any of the article. Josiah, you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give one teaser that if we just ask or just look at European survey respondents and ask them who their favorite player is, or who are they rooting for the most, Simon Lizotte is no longer number one.
Ooh.
And if we do that of just asking just women who took the survey as well, Simon Lizotte is no longer one. So for both of those in this next article, there is a whole new suite of players up at the top that a specific demographic is rooting for the most.
Gotcha.
I think Kristen Tarr also dropped off, if I remember, for women as well.
Let's give the whole article right now.
No,
Yeah, right.
This is
I'm like,
awesome
okay,
teasers.
who are these?
It'll
names?
make me actually click and read
Just
it.
a little teaser.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So
And
listeners,
this also
go
makes it
support them.
like, I know this is probably not realistic, but just saying, like, if I'm like a disc golf promoter, so I'm going to say manufacturer or anything else of that sort when I'm thinking about sponsorships, like, or I'd love to like discreetly, like really run like a legit hardcore experiment and see if I could move my player up that fandom score.
Can
There's
we
just
make
gotta
that
be
a goal
so many. Well,
for next year, our show?
Well,
Like,
well, we could.
We pick
Right, we
one
could
player,
for our
don't,
show.
Don't tell
right.
anybody. But the
Yeah, so you come
whole
back
year, our
next
goal
year.
is to get
Yeah.
them up.
Could do something like that. But I mean, legitimately, just thinking even as a business plan, like, what's the impact of getting your player in the top 3 or 4 compared to somebody averaging a 5.6 where people are kind of giving you a shoulder shrug? They're like, I kind of like it. You're fine. Versus somebody who, like, if you launch them up, and we talked about winning is the way to do that. I get it.
Mhm.
But I'm saying, what about like a media push? Like, can you imagine if a disc golf manufacturer literally decided to promote their top player who's not winning all the time and just like see what could come of that? I don't know. It's just the way my mind's thinking, but the data.
I mean, that would be really interesting. I 100% agree.
Yeah.
Just like smart businesses use data when making decisions, and we're providing a whole bunch of new data that nobody had before.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think you're absolutely right that, this might be a metric in terms of deciding, whether you're successfully marketing your players or not is seeing whether they're going up or down on fandom score.
Yeah. And one thing that they have that you don't have, I don't think, is the actual dollars and cents. So like if I'm them, you layer on the dollars and cents to these players over these scores and see other correlations and factors. And obviously that's, they're trying to move that needle. So it would just be interesting for them to explore all of those factors.
Yeah.
We do have some of that data in terms of sales. Like we do ask people which signature series they bought, and we ask them why they bought those signature series discs. Was it just the disc? Was it the mold? Was it because of who throws it? We do have some of that data, but you're absolutely right. We don't have the deep data they have on their sales.
Yeah.
But I definitely think it's true though, because when it comes to a bottom line and money question, when the article comes out about disc sales, it's going to include a graphic that's showing percentage this player is your favorite player and percentage of respondents who bought their Tour Series disc. And you can clearly see how these are related. I mean, that makes sense, but it's not just true at the top. It's also true of, the 10 to 20th best player that we're looking at.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Love it. Well, if nothing else, again, me selfishly, I would say I love the data because it provokes conversation and thought. Some of it's actionable, some of it's probably just plain old fun, but it's pretty cool. And I know I'll be looking forward to seeing what else you come out with, and we can debate it on the show if it rises to that level. But this is great. Anything else that you had planned to share that we're missing?
No, that's it. We wrapped it all up. Thanks so much for having us. And if anybody has any questions, they can reach out to us. If there's anybody in the industry and they want us to answer some deep questions they have that our market research could help with, please reach out. We're available, discgolfsurvey.com. All of our contact information's there.
Great. I was going to say discgolfsurvey.com, perfectly natural website. So that's easy to get to. Plus your articles are published on Ultraworld Disc Golf, right? Where it tells me, Jesse, we already know that you organize tours and do that stuff. And Josiah, I guess you're a neuroscientist. Is that what we have going on there?
Yeah, yes, my day job is I'm a neuroscientist. So
awesome. Cool. Well, I am not that, but anyway, but thank you so much for crunching the numbers. Obviously anything like this is it's a lot of work. And I'm sure you enjoy some of it, but I'm sure some of it is like, you got to do it because you're committed to doing it. So thank you for doing that, for coming on the show tonight. And really appreciate it. So again, thank you for your time. I'm sure we'll have you back at some point in the future.
Awesome. Thank you all
Thanks
so much.
Goodbye.
Have a good night.
I know they couldn't hear us, I think, when I was off the screen. But anyways, thank you to them, Jesse and Josiah. But yeah, neuroscientists, that's freaking badass. And then just doing disc golf fandom surveys on the side. Good for him.
So just as a feedback immediately from the chat, they were hearing Josh, I'm assuming there, but for some reason I've lost level, metering, but nobody was saying anything. So, all right. So yeah,
well,
Josh,
good stuff from them.
Yeah. A lot of information. Like I said, some people, it's not their cup of tea, but now they're probably smarter for it. And then some people love it and they're wishing we had more of that, but we're going to continue off season, especially to try to bring interesting conversations to you. And as always, trying to bring relevant player interviews as they make sense as well. So yeah, there you go. That was pretty cool.
Very cool. So it is the off season, which means we're always bouncing around topics, kind of following social media, what's happening. A lot of the pros are quiet because they're enjoying the off season. We're going to talk about Q series. Obviously just talked about some survey results. There's probably other things we could debate, but I thought Nick said we're 95 days away from the start of the season. So we have tons of time on this show to actually preview like what we think is going to happen in 2025. But the truth is a lot of that is like exciting when we see if there is player movement in the sponsorship ranks or other news. And when we start seeing which players are kind of publishing what their tour plans are. So we're not kind of ready to digest all of that yet, but I thought we'd just take a few minutes and kind of preview the 2025 season. We haven't really discussed that on this show. The Pro Tour has announced it. I'm sure a lot of the players right now are actually making those decisions about where am I going to actually tour? Am I going to follow every single event or am I going to join some of the events, the different swings, etc.? So if that's good, I'm going to kind of give a little bit of an overview and then we can just kind of discuss it. This doesn't have to be all that drawn out, but hopefully for our listeners, if they haven't had time to slow down and actually look at what's happening next year, I'll kind of give them that overview. Sound like a plan?
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right. So next year, there's 25 events on tour. So
that's a lot.
That's over 34 weeks. Kicking off with your event at the end of February. There's only 9 weeks with no weekend Pro Tour disc golf, that including the majors when I say that. So
and
starting in February,
they're going to throw in Q Series events in those
yeah, well,
9
right, yeah.
weeks.
If you throw in Q Series or anybody who sneaks in an A Tour, here as some of them do. Yeah. But I mean, that's a lot of golf. You only have to go back so many years. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but back before the Pro Tour really combined with the National Tour, et cetera, I mean, the number of events was significantly less. And so I still think there are growing pains for players and or the tour themselves to still adapt to 25 events on tour. Listen, there's 5 majors. 4 of them are MPO majors. That's because you have U.S. women's still in there. 2 majors this year are in Europe. And it's interesting how they're scheduled. We can talk about it. 7 total events out of the 25 are in Europe. So just for a frame of reference. And the Pro Tour, by the way, this is their 10th season. So that's kind of a cool little fact. The years fly by. Still remember when it was their first season, kind of figuring that out. But they advertised their 2025 schedule in 6 phases. And obviously, this is just how they're promoting it. At the end of the day, it's a whole end-to-end tour. But the season kickoff, which starts with what we're calling the Florida Open, but Nick, we're all waiting to hear what that actually is going to be called.
Yeah,
I'm
no
not
idea
going
when we're actually allowed to announce it. But
All right, well,
it is
Dude,
not
it's gonna
the
be-
Florida Open.
It's gonna
All right.
be like the Keurig K Cup Open. You guys are just gonna get
wouldn't
bigger
be bad.
and better random corporate sponsors.
Hey, that
That'd be
random corporate sponsors is where it's at.
Yeah,
And I'm not going to walk through every single event name, but the season kickoff phase includes Florida and then back across Texas, up to Nashville, and we see the Kansas City Wide Open, which is a cool return to the tour. Then we move to the West Coast Swing, as we call it, which this year includes the Champions Cup. I know a lot of mixed feelings about that, but obviously that's moved there for at least this season. And then you have the Cascade Challenge and Northwest Disc Golf Championship, which is really not a replacement, but kind of a merging of some events, which has taken over the Portland Open. Then you move to the third phase, Midwest Stretch. What's interesting about this phase is it also overlaps with some of the European events. So like some players will literally have to decide because it's almost impossible to travel. I guess you could literally jet set back and forth between these. But this is also the Midwest Stretch. In late June is when you have the U.S. Women's Championship. Then they've been advertising what they call a European Summer because the stretch is pretty long. So starting in May, you've got the Kona Piste Open, which in the past has been a major. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. It's been many years. I forget when. I think Eagle McMahon won that event.
Yeah. a long time ago.
And then a few other events that you'll recognize, but just fast forwarding. So then you have in July the European Disc Golf Festival, which is a major, which
That
more
being
or
the one
less
in
is kind of
Estonia,
replacing the European Open, kind of, right?
Yeah.
This goes real quick. It's at the same venue, right? It's the music.
Yes.
Historic
Well, yeah,
music venue.
it's in Tallinn, so I just assumed that.
So we don't need to break it down now, but my intrusive thought said that venue, as epic as it appeared and the amount that went into it, I had heard others be like, the course didn't feel like a major course, like specifically course. And so I know we've talked about it. Majors are dependent on the players and the title. So I know we're going to get that experience. And I'm sure with it being a second year event, and again, I know it's been around for a while, but second year actually in this kind of state, I think we'll see improvements, right? Like to the point of like what USDGC is, like they used to play over parking lots and this kind of thing. Like there was a little bit of that feeling there, some of the feedback I got. But anyways, let's see. It's a PDGA major. Let's see
just to kind of butt in off of that. It's like, okay, so what do we consider? We don't really like, what is our standard for a major course? The only consistent major that we have ever had is USDGC. Other than that, Worlds has changed every single year. I'm sorry, European Open has been at the Beast every single year until, this past year where they were actually to use the Tampere Disc Golf Center course as well. But like, what do we consider a major course? Because every single year, Worlds changes. So in 2021, we're out in Utah playing the Fort and Mulligans. Mulligans definitely was not a major worthy course. It was still played for a major, though.
How many states? This is more of maybe a horrible question, but to put it in perspective, how many states in the United States have a major worthy course? In the United States, how many? And I frankly, that's tough. And I'm not going to say world specifically, but major level in Massachusetts, you're probably talking Maple Hill, the only one.
Just Maple, yeah.
Like, so then go around to different states. Like, I hate to say it, but New Hampshire doesn't have one. I don't think Maine, there might be an argument for one of them there. Like Pineland, maybe Sabatis, maybe. But like you start going, I'm in New England, but just think to yourself, wherever you're from, like, is your course in your state, do you even have one that's major worthy? I don't know the answer to that, Nick. What does a major worthy course look like? I think it should be private or be in full control, like without having to throw over in your parking lots. sporting
Yeah.
fences. Even though the Beast did that, they did pretty good. But still, I think we're outgrowing some of that. So anyways, interesting what everyone else feels like is a major worthy course.
Yeah, well, and then scheduling wise, it's also interesting because is it just like 10 days after that event ends, there's another major. And I did not actually look at the calendar, so maybe someone will remind me. But like, I feel like it's been a long time since we've seen 2 majors back to back with only like 10 days between. Now, purely from a scheduling and travel standpoint, I totally like that's like awesome, right? You're over in Europe. Players can make a 2.5 week trip and nail 2 majors. So that like totally get it. But from like the biggest events, there's only 4 MPO majors all year, and we're going to knock out 2 of them in July. Feels a little bit weird.
Bam.
I don't know. It's just going to be interesting. Like who, if you're a player, gear up for July. Like that's it, because you could make or break your entire season right there. And it's in Europe, which is the first time I think we've had that. There's been majors in Europe. My point is though, is like, you have to basically be in Europe or else you're missing out on half of the MPO majors. So just an
It's wild to
interesting
think about it
observation.
like that, but yeah.
Did I see something and it's unsubstantiated? Like I'm literally speaking in the moment. I saw something on social media. I might have downloaded or screen grabbed it. Something about ticket costs. Okay, here it is.
Oh,
$15,000
Was this doctored up and
VIP.
manufactured? I have a
Nope.
screen grab. of it.
I know the answer. Yes, I know.
Okay.
15,000 euros.
Yeah, something
That's
on
a
PDGA's
yes. So
World
most of the
Championships.
actual tickets are not that. That's not doctored up, but it's literally like a truly kind of crazy, unique, probably overinflated, unique luxury experience, Matt. So that's like one out of like
Sheesh.
one.
Okay.
So you can. A lot of tickets are already sold out, by the way. And there's a whole bunch of tiers, but there's pretty traditional tiers just to get on the course and watch, and they're not ridiculous. So you can buy regularly priced tickets. But if you want to basically be a legit VIP,
15,000? Is that what you said?
Yeah, euros.
yeah, but they coordinate, like you literally have people like chauffeuring you, coordinating your
Chauffeur.
dinner while you're there,
Yeah.
like valet everywhere.
Beautiful
you can call
hotel.
them and they're
it's
like,
like
your
if
personal
you're a
airport.
really celeb person, they're going to treat you that way.
not
But-
like VIP like we think about at Worlds. This is like, we're going to put you up in a place and we're going to like wine and dine you for
But
5 days.
what is this
That's a
little...
down payment on a house.
Not quite, but yeah, it's a
Not
start.
quite.
That's a down payment on a house with an FHA loan.
Yes, right. But yeah, but again, to be clear, for some people, that's not a down payment on a house. That's just the way it goes.
Let me bring this up though. It shows this little notification on the screen I was holding up too, and I'm not sure I'm reading it correctly, but it just simply says disc golf event, which takes place at Tampere Disc Golf Center and Nokia Disc Golf Park. Due to the nature of the sport, accessibility cannot be arranged in the actual course area. You can follow the event on live screens from both event centers, and also street food areas are accessible for all. Are they literally saying that accessibility cannot be arranged in the actual course area? Are they not letting people walk? What does that mean?
No, I think that's saying
know.
they can't guarantee, like if you're on the course with other spectators,
Okay.
like they can't guarantee that you're like
You're going to be able to see everything.
in like a shuttle that's bringing you to the
for
front.
that ticket, they can't guarantee the same accessibility. Is that kind of what they're saying? Like when
Yeah.
you're on the course? Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I'm not sure. I can't speculate right there. But I know that they said they have regular tickets and then they have multiple tiers of VIP tickets. Some of them actually look pretty legit. Like if I were traveling over there, like they're pretty reasonable. Like get dinners covered while you sit in a booth and watch the live event. But you also have regular stuff and then you have that's most extreme. So that's kind of like somebody drawing out the most ridiculous ticket
7
and
day
trying to like put that out
luxury
there.
experience is what they're calling it.
Yeah.
Look,
7 day
if I hit the
luxury.
Powerball tonight,
Jeez Louise.
I'm buying it.
Yeah,
I'm
but
doing
like,
it.
so I think it's ridiculous. So Ben, I'm with you on saying it's kind of absurd, but we just need to acknowledge there are legit rich people who like disc golf who that's like easy. You're saying, oh, I get to go to Europe for a week for 15 grand. They spend more than 15 grand going on a European trip normally.
Oh, wait.
There are just people who
Sorry,
do that.
I didn't read it. Does it include flights and stuff?
No, I don't think
didn't
it
read-
includes flights.
Oh.
So it ends up being like a 17,000.
Or like accommodate, or do they house you? Does it include lodging? I'm
I
guessing.
think it may include lodging.
I think it's all
Better.
lodged. Lodging,
just have to get there.
meals, chauffeur.
It's still too expensive. We're not saying that. I'm just trying to say like somebody's going to buy it.
Someone
Yeah.
is going to buy it.
And it's gonna be UC Maresma.
No, I actually think one of the things you get is dinner with UC.
Oh,
Yeah, so he'll just eat alone.
Oh yeah. All right. Well, anyway. There are millionaires, like legit, when I say millionaires, like people with million,
I know.
liquid cash in their bank who follow disc golf.
shout out to millionaires. And no, I'm kind of joking.
Shout out
as
to
a segue.
billionaires owning the Pro Tour. So,
But I was going to say, kind of as not a segue to millionaires, I don't want to do that kind of pressure on this guy, but we have someone who won the Staggered Stance Maple Hill Disc Golf Experience. They've bid in an auction, the Paul Macbeth Charity
we talked
Foundation.
about it on the show before,
Yeah, but
not
they
the winner,
did it.
but yeah.
Yeah, and they won, and I've been in contact with them. They actually,
And he's a billionaire.
that's my point. Where's this
We don't
liquid
know.
money
We
coming
don't
from
know,
to
yeah.
bid the money they're bidding to play around with us? I mean, come on.
Wait, is this guy actually a billionaire?
We don't know.
We have no idea. We didn't ask him how much money he has. That might be
We'll
good.
find out.
What's your
find
name?
out.
What's your net worth?
We'll find out. But no, we'll talk more about that, I'm sure. But I just was kind of throwing it out there. These people that are bidding on these experiences, like playing around with Gannon. Was it Gannon and someone else in that auction? And it was like $2,500 just to play around.
Yeah.
And Ben's like, I do that multiple times a year. Like, but my point is, like, it costs
It's
someone will just do
different. I
that
understand.
money. Yeah, but
It's
somebody will
different,
just
yeah.
drop like $2,500. Well, one, it's charity.
Plus, that money's going to charity
Yes,
foundation
one, it's charity.
too, which is nice.
True. But the other is like cool opportunities.
All right, hey, let me just finish out the season. So after Europe, we come back to the next phase is return to the States, which includes Ledgestone, Idlewild, D-Glow, and then they are calling it their East Coast finish, which we still are promoting playoff events. I think we've all kind of mentioned the playoff term is weird. I love the more weighted points. I get that, but that's GMC, MVP Open, USDGC, and then the championship. So a lot of familiar events. I think we already talked about some of the events that changed from prior years. So I don't know if we have to like dive into that necessarily, but just wanted to kind of give that preview, let some of that sink in. We'll have more time to break some of that down. It'll be interesting to see which players choose, what the European swing really looks like. But a lot of familiar events, a few new ones, a few things moving around. Noticeably what DDO is off, Jonesboro is off, and those have been perennial like since the beginning almost.
Long time.
So that's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Any other reactions? I mean, we debated the major a little bit. Anything else?
Excited to see the new courses on tour. Kansas City's one where a lot of the people from Kansas City have said we can't wait to get back on the tour, show everyone what they've got. So I'm definitely excited for that. And then the European stretch is always really, really fun. The beauty of those courses. I know a lot of pros were saying how beautiful, I forget all the names of the courses, but just how well done those events were, course-wise, spectator-wise, and faculty, staff, all that good stuff. Just very, very well done. I'm slightly biased. I'm super excited for our event down here in Brooksville. So we're, doing a lot to try to make that bigger and better every year.
Yeah, you going to guarantee some good weather and not a lot of rain leading up to the event?
I sure hope so. Like, if I could have held the Elite Series event this past weekend, it would have been the most insanely fun time in the world. So I'm just hoping somehow, some way, we don't get a monsoon during the All-Star event. That would be quite incredible. It was funny, too, because I was asking, the DGPT staff was in town, some of them this week, and I was like, what's the easiest event that you guys go to and they work? And they told me what it was, and I was like, okay. And we knew this. Our event was the hardest event that the DGPT had to, work at, set up, clean up, all these different things because of how bad that weather was. And so my goal every single year is how do I make their life easier to the point where they say going to Olympus is the easiest thing in the world. All of our stuff is already going to be there. We just go in, set up, and then we get to hang out until the tournament starts. Like that's what I want out of this. And hopefully February does not turn into a monsoon again. And that's really all I can ask for.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Anything else on the season? We'll have more time to break it down. We're going to debate every one of those events next year. So,
Season wise, no, but speculation wise, Prodigy Discs had a massive sale
Well,
on their website.
All right, so I was just going to segue, and you did it for us. Here's what I was going to say. I was going to say, everybody in the chat, take bets on what's the likelihood I can get either Ben, Matt, or Nick to accidentally slip some news that they're not supposed to slip. That's my goal here, because I do not have any inside scoop. I don't know, Nick, Matt, Ben, any inside scoop on movement? Nick, you're already hinting at the Prodigy Disc clearance. Was it bad? They didn't use the word clearance, did they? But it felt like a clearance sale, which means you're getting rid of inventory.
It was like insane prices.
I have a pretty good idea on one person, not Isaac, but I have a pretty good idea on someone else that fortunately I haven't slipped yet. Well, hopefully I don't. But I do know someone that is, I'm 99% sure they're moving companies.
So no,
Anthony Barella.
I do not have.
Where's he going? Where's he going?
No inside scoops on Prodigy, but I will say in a general sense, and I'm trying to make my take here. Obviously, unless we go back, it's a bad take and we replay it later, we'll laugh at it. But I think with the way that money has stopped. Yeah, I don't know if stop's the right word. Plateaued. It's definitely going back to where it would have probably kind of normally been. Like it did that, pretty steep climb. And I only say this because of conversations with disc golf industry people. And Ben, you're doing this all the time. So I'm sure you have similar feelings or feedback when you're talking to people, Expo even. Like, hey, we're not doing as good as we were a year ago or 2 years ago in general, or you're going into the off season and then you realize like either we got to cut back, like our business has to really scale down, which is all kind of normal business. You go seasonally like this with disc golf. But part of me feels like if it's the smaller guys dealing with it, the bigger guys are too. And I'm not saying, but like the smaller guys dealing with it is a bigger deal than the big guys dealing with it because they can kind of make it, they could kind of coast through, right? Whether it was savings or whatever. But what's interesting is when it comes to the players, we already know this. We're not going to see as big of contracts, but I also think here's kind of the take that I'm bringing. We're going to see players let go. I think we're going to see more players let go that are then going to try to find a company, and that'll be kind of public. I know that's happened a little bit in the past, but whenever that happens and they're like, hey, I'm no longer sponsored by so-and-so, and that's their announcement, it was not part of their plan. And so I think we're going to see more of that this offseason because of those things. And then when you mention Prodigy, I'm kind of thinking Prodigy's feeling it just as much as anybody, but they also didn't have Gannon. Isaac has been somewhat vocal about, and maybe you had to interpret this and read between the lines, but somewhat vocal about like, hey, like, at least my interpretation is, hey, I don't have any allegiance there and I'm going to shop the best price. Like that was my interpretation when we've talked to him. And so it's kind of, to go back to the fandom survey, I kind of feel like things weren't the most positive for Prodigy. And if they're really feeling it, maybe they're downsizing. Like they're going to reshape. I mean,
you saw them get rid
restructure.
Of Vino and Kevin Jones.
Right.
And especially Kevin. I mean, I have a pretty good feeling that Kevin was getting paid a good amount of money because it was like at the height of the COVID boom, and he was finishing. He almost won like 7 different times, it seemed like. So like, and he had his own disc line. So they were that's probably one of the reasons. Like, yeah, we can't fill this contract anymore. It's just not sustainable. And I think they might have or expended themselves. I do think Isaac is going to a different company solely based on the fact of that sale. I mean. I don't know. I feel like the writing's pretty clear with that one.
So
writing's on the wall.
Yeah, just kind of hitting some quick math with it. Josh, just a little bit ago, you said there's 25 Elite Series and majors, right?
Yes.
Going up into the 2025 season. So if I take 25, and let's say every event, I think nowadays averages anywhere from $350 to $400 in tournament entry fees. So I'm just going to use $350 as a general rule of thumb here. That's $8,750. So $8,750 is what it costs to sign up for every single all 25 Elite Series and majors going to next year. Discraft, their elite team, has 12 players on it. More than likely, I don't know the elite team's contracts or anything like that, but more than likely, somewhere, somehow, in those contracts, I'm assuming that Discraft probably pays for entry fees. Take 12 elite team members, take $8,750. Boom, you have $105,000 that essentially Discraft is giving out to their players, let's say January 1st, so that all of them can sign up for their tournaments throughout the season. But then you've got the $1 million man in your team. You're paying $1 million to Paul Macbeth. That's $86,000 a month that is coming out of Discraft's pocket going into their favorite player. And so doing stuff like that, it's just where disc golf has headed nowadays. Like I think Matt said it perfectly. I think we are going to see players get dropped, not even essentially dropped fully from the manufacturer, but I would not be surprised if they got dropped a team level. The only reason I'm throwing Discraft out there right now is because I play for their tour team. So I know they have the elite team, the tour team. I think there's a core team, and then the underground team. So it would not surprise me that if some of these players, just using it for example, go from your elite team, your star team, your whatever Prodigy's highest team is, and then drop them down to just touring players to where some entry fees are paid for. They get more disc bonus because it's a lot cheaper giving people discs and letting them hustle a little bit more to earn that money. I think the ROI in so many different things in disc golf right now has taken such a huge halt compared to what it was 2-3 years ago that, yeah, every company in disc golf is feeling it right now. So, yeah, it's a lot of money. There's a lot of touring pros. There's a lot of really, really good players. But when you look at that, who are the marketable players? And that's what companies have to really look for right now. Who's winning tournaments, but also who is still really marketable. Paul Macbeth's not winning tournaments right now, but he's still one of the most marketable players in all of disc golf. So, anywho, that's kind of my spiel on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think towards the top end of the market, probably still like gonna do just fine. I mean, I think the top crazy payouts will definitely come down, but those top tier players are still gonna get everything covered and get some cash salary, and they'll be just fine.
Yeah.
It'll be down off of the 2021, 2022 like numbers for sure. But I think where it becomes really tough, and this is kind of what you're saying, is like that mid tier and below, where players who actually have the potential to become great, but we don't know yet, and they're just showing up on the tour, but they were getting deals because there was enough money to go around. Those are the ones who are going to really feel the pinch, because it's like, we don't know what the ROI is and we don't have extra cash to bet on anybody, right? It's like, we're going to pay the people who we know have ROI for us. And I don't know, it'll be interesting to see players have to get different, creative in a different way. And maybe that's unfortunate for our sport. But it also could just be a reasonable balance toward our growth. It doesn't mean the sport's not growing. It doesn't mean like young kids should still be competing because one day they could get $1 million contract. Those things are still all on the table. It's not like that has crashed. It's just like the accelerated pace of every year, people just like being able to reach out to companies and they're like, yeah, I have enough cash to pay for all your event entries. That kind of thing's gonna fade.
And the other thing is like, what is, realistically, what's the most innovative thing that has come out in disc golf recently? Like, what company has come out with the most innovative thing to really excel them above other companies? And I'll kind of throw out an example.
Well, hold on. We could sell ad spots. How about we just let them pay for that and we'll just...
Yeah, I know, right?
Do you have an innovative product?
Yeah, do you have an innovative idea? Come to Staggered Stance and hit me up. Like in 2019, when Discraft made the, big contract public with Paul, and then they were also coming out with really cool swirly ESP plastic, and they were doing a lot of things that it caught everyone's eyes. These 4-claw discs had a, badass stamp on them. And that rode a high wave for a while, especially, COVID comes around, and then Paul wins a world championship. So then it turns into the 5-claws going into 2020, on and on and on. So that was huge for disc golf and Discraft in that sense. And then take another company, Innova, came out with Halo, which is, by far one of the coolest plastics in all of disc golf.
The Champion now, Halo Swirl Champion is like insane looking.
It's a very, very cool looking plastic. It flies great from what I've heard. Pros love it. Amateurs love it. They do Halo polecats. Like, they really took the Halo thing and made it incredible. And then what did every other company do? They came out with Horizon plastic. They came out with Orbital plastic. Every other company was like, hey, that's a great idea. I'm going to do the same thing. And then now you can go into people's bags and all you see are these Halo type looking discs, whatever, company is coming from. But that's the thing. It's like, what has been the most recent innovative thing in disc golf? I think GK Pro tried to do it with the big money skins, and it had all this hype around it, and then just flopped. Like I've never seen coverage for it. I know Calvin won it. Who else was even in it? I don't even know. But anyway, so I think that's also one of the things, is that we're kind of in a lull right now. Is there's so many disc golf manufacturers right now. There's so many people creating plastic. There's so many companies using other companies to create their plastic that, you have a destroyer out there. 7 other companies have the exact same disc with the same flight numbers and almost the same feel, not always the same flight, but for the most part, most companies, like if I'm saying, hey, I throw a nuke, okay, great. What's my Innova version of a nuke? Great. I got myself a Boss. And you can have 8 different plastic types of a Boss, 8 different plastic types of a nuke. And that's where we've kind of, right now in disc golf, I feel like we're in a lull. What's the most imaginative thing someone has done since then? Inspirational, innovative, anything like that. So, yeah,
it'll be interesting to watch. Sometimes you have a little bit of a retraction in the business side, and they focus on their tried and true to kind of maintain that revenue and cash flow. But yeah, companies are still going to innovate and grow. That's what I'm saying. It's not a crash. It's just a slowing down, which is actually, in the long term, may not be a bad thing. In the short term, when you're slowing down from a certain speed, you feel it. You feel that whiplash because you're like, whoa, we're going slow. But it's like, it's probably still sustainable. If these businesses do it right, they'll sustain. That's the key. If they don't do it right, they'll crash. And we maybe actually see some of that, right? So in some places, a little bit like, I don't know enough about this, so maybe I'll putting a foot in my mouth. But like Lone Star might be an example where it's like, I don't know exactly what their future plans are, but like they rode that wave really high, and then we just see a significant like retraction. Right,
but
compared
to your point,
some of our bigger companies may just manage it differently.
But to your point, Josh, they might be further ahead than where they would have been had they started up without the boom, right? Like they rode it so far, pulled back. It looks like a massive pullback, and we use them as an example, but it may be totally false. But as an example, they would still be ahead. And I think disc golf,
unless they
ahead.
Fold completely, right? And that's kind of what I'm saying.
If they don't,
some companies who just don't make it.
If they don't re-strategize or Interesting talk. So let's wait and see what happens. Speaking of which, there's not a lot of off-season talk. Next week we are taking off the show. That is November. No, that's December 2nd. So if you're waking up on December 3rd looking for a show, you won't find it. We'll try to make sure that's promoted a little bit. There's the off chance that like someone records a monologue, like maybe.
Like Josh.
Or if something big happens and we're chomping at the bit, we're back here too.
Yeah, if big news happens, check.
I've been on 43 episodes this year, so like I'm ready for a little vacation.
Yeah.
Sheesh.
Good for you. You've earned one.
Yeah, so Nick will be holding it down by himself next week.
Yeah. Don't worry. We're going to start at 7:00, which really means 7:20, and there's going to be technical difficulties.
You'll be pressing the buttons,
everywhere.
Nick. We'll just hook you up down there to do it all.
With my super loud
Maybe
keyboard.
I'll just stream a video game unrelated to the staggered stance.
Ben and I will just play Call of Duty the whole time.
Yes.
You could live stream on the channel. We just wouldn't push it to our podcast listeners. And honestly, I've said this a lot, but our listeners who are actually downloading or listening on their favorite podcast streaming platforms, you are substantial in a way beyond YouTube. And that is what interests us most when it comes to statistics. YouTube, it's a great platform. It's not built necessarily for long form content and the way you try not to do clickbaity stuff. And you got to so you're real fans as well. But when we know people are listening, that's the whole thing. And it's really helpful to us. So we appreciate that.
Yeah, the chat was great today. Going off some new faces that I don't really recognize. We're, doing some good content.
Yeah, we got lots of good chatter in there.
So come into the chat is what we're saying. We love the chat. I respond to the chat all day, every day.
Cool. Well, we made it to this point in the show. I frankly think that it's time to wrap it up. It's the off season. No point to linger unless there's something people are really dying to say before we go.
Bingo.
All right. Well, it's been a while, Nick, but I'm putting you back out there, man. It's your,
I know.
It's your
Thank
job
you,
to
everybody,
close
for
it
tuning
out.
on this wonderful Monday night of Staggered Stands. I forget what episode exactly we are on, but 215. So thank you, everybody, once again tuning in. Check us out on all your favorite podcast platforms. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe on the YouTube channel. Hang out with us every Monday night live at 7 o'clock, except for next week. Hang out in the YouTube live chat. It's a really, really fun time. Ben and I know all the guys.
Harry
really
Chase just
there.
commented. Now listen, Harry, if you just
Dude, he's
joined,
goated.
we talked about you earlier.
We did.
Way
Shout
to
out
go,
Harry
dude.
Chase. Awesome finish
Scary
this past
Harry.
weekend. It was great to see them. Yeah, comment, like, subscribe, do all those cool things. Tell someone you love them this week. Catch you all in the next one.
That's right, everybody. Until next time, peace
Later.
out.